going to bring in two of our reporters from the Washington Stand to cover a number of stories that have been breaking already this week. Joining us is Sarah Holliday and managing editor for broadcast, Casey Harper. Sarah, Casey, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so I want to start with you, Casey. The story we touched on earlier in the program about a Texas man suing a California doctor for mailing the abortion drug into the state of Texas and taking the life of his unborn child, that in violation of Texas law. This is what's called a private right of action. Mm-hmm. Talk about that.
Yeah, that's right. This is really the first real test, I would say, of this Texas law where California doctor is mailing abortion pills into not just Texas, by the way, many other states like Louisiana.
Well, yeah, in fact, this is the same doctor that's been indicted in Louisiana, and the Attorney General, Liz Murrill, who we've had on the program before, has sought to extradite him, but there are these shield laws that are protecting him in these blue states.
Mm-hmm. It's really a constitutional crisis because in reaction, California has said, well, we're going to hide the records. And if what are you hiding is a good question. But California has made it where you cannot get the information or records of these abortionists. And really, you have two different states of laws that are conflicting. It comes down to the federal government and the policy via mifepristone that they're allowing. It's creating a constitutional crisis by allowing pro-life states, babies are still being killed by the abortion pill that's shipped in.
So this is all being, this conflict between the red states and the blue states, is basically what it is, is being created by the federal government's policy on mifepristone.
That's right. I think in the post-Roe v. Wade world, there was this myth that, well, the blue states will do their thing and the red states will do their thing, and there'll be pro-life states and there'll be pro-choice states. That's not true. All states under this mifepristone FDA policy are effectively pro-choice states. It's actually in some ways worse than before Roe v. Wade was overturned. Abortions are up. The abortion pill now accounts for about 63% of all abortions in the country, and that's happening in very red states like Louisiana, very pro-life states like Texas.
Well, and I've, again, talking to the Attorney General in Louisiana, she was preparing her case because she has actually sued the FDA over this policy, that as best as they can tell, and it's hard to get numbers because there's no reporting requirements, but they're estimating that the number of abortions in Louisiana are actually higher now than prior to the overturn of Roe, and abortion is illegal in the state of Louisiana.
Yeah, and it's, what's maybe most frustrating to many pro-lifers is they elected a Republican House, Senate, and White House,
right? And
this is still happening.
Sarah, there's a similar element of this private right of action that allows this Texas man to sue the doctor. This is not the state taking the action. This is the individual taking the action. Well, we're seeing that now take place when it comes to these transgender procedures that have been performed on minors. We actually now see them turning around and suing the doctors that and the medical institutions that did it.
That's correct. In fact, we have a historic trial that we are now seeing unfold right before our eyes with Fox Varian, 22 years old now, but at 16 years old, she was put on this conveyor belt of so-called gender-affirming care, and she had a double mastectomy. And now she is one of those people who is filing a lawsuit, who has filed a lawsuit, because she's suing her psychologist and her plastic surgeon because she was, like many people, rushed. She wasn't properly evaluated. That she's claiming that there were standards of care that were completely sidelined. And now here she is, so young, 22 years old, with irreversible harm done to her body in the name of this inclusion, this transgenderism. Right. People should have the right to challenge the people that have done the harm to them, that are hiding the truth of this.
And they're doing it because of political pressure. We've seen these medical institutions or medical associations changing policies because of the political pressure. They should have to give an account for that. That is one way to do it. This is actually one of the legitimate uses of our court system.
Yes, and they should definitely have to be held accountable because a lot of these ideologies, whether it's pro-abortion or pro-transgenderism, is based on lies and deceit. Not only is it going against the Word of God, the fact that we are made beautiful the way God created us to be. Our genetic makeup is fixed. We can't just decide to be a man or a woman whenever we feel like it. And we can't just say that a human life in the womb is all of a sudden just a clump of cells and not bearing inherent dignity and value. And so these These are ideologies that are counter to God's word, his truth. They're completely dependent on lies. They cannot operate without those lies. And so they need to be held accountable, because accountability is going to expose those lies.
And the court is one of the ways to do that. Casey, back when I was in the legislature as a very conservative legislator, I know you find that hard to believe.
That's breaking. Let's get that.
But I worked with trial lawyers, Christian trial lawyers, because the Bible lays out very clearly tort. And that people have a right to be made whole. And in this case, I think this is a very effective use of the courts. I am glad to see, states providing that private right of action. I hope we're able to get that at the federal level as well. And then secondly, to see trial lawyers that are taking on these cases, because this will shut down a lot of this very quickly, because they will soon find it's impossible to get malpractice insurance, and so you're going to see institutions and doctors moving away from this.
Yeah, that's right. And I think for people in our world, this transgender issue has been a very political issue. We think about it politically, and Republicans and Democrats, and how it affected the election. But what these lawsuits remind us is it's a justice issue, and that's why the courts are working out. And there are real victims. It's not just an abstract bad policy economic idea. There are real victims. I mean, you can't even get a tattoo. And if you give a kid a tattoo, you can get in trouble, but you can give them a mastectomy.
Or an abortion.
Yeah.
I mean, these are politically protected, but this is going to break through that barrier of political protection when people start getting sued for engaging in this charade, which is what it is. I wonder how that affects
malpractice.
It's going to make it very, very difficult. And that's why I encourage my trial lawyer friends to get into this and even search out and solicit, because as Walt Heyer has been on the program before talking about this, there are so many that have regrets, and just as this case here, that they were underage, they can't make certain decisions for themselves, but they were led down this path. I'm glad to see it. It's tragic that it had to happen, but I hope this could be another turning point to where this is put far into the past. All right, I want to go on to another topic. I want to play a clip from Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, talking about Minnesota and the violation of what should be a safe space, if you will.
We live in the United States of America, and you will have the right to worship safely and freely in a house of worship, whether it's a church, a synagogue, a temple, a mosque, any house of worship in this country, you will be safe. And these people committed a crime under the FACE Act, and they will be held accountable. 9 of them have been charged, and you will not do this in our country. We're coming after you if you do this, because we are going to protect houses of worship.
Casey, I have been advocating for years that the FACE Act be used to go after those who disrupt church services. It was designed to shut down pro-lifers outside of abortion clinics. Finally, in the second go-round of the Trump administration, they are using it.
Yeah, it's sort of there's kind of two ways to look at it here. You could say, I think many Democrats didn't even know that the FACE Act had this provision in it. They're totally ignorant when they talk about it. And this law has been used to really abuse and bludgeon the pro-life movement for many years. And some will say, well, this law shouldn't exist. And it's, it took it being used against both sides.
That was my argument, was that if we wanted to make it go away, which I would like to see it go away, is use it. As Orrin Hatch was the one that put that, the very last part of the debate over the bill in the Senate, he put that in there. This is one of the benefits of longevity, being around. You know, and so he put that on, and it passed. Same year, by the way, that Bill Clinton signed the International Religious Freedom Restoration Act, and I take that back, the Religious Freedom Act, the domestic. He signed that into law almost just not far apart from signing the FACE Act, which this provision protecting religious freedom there was no objection to it. But we didn't see the hostility back then toward religion that we see today. But I can assure you, if we have administrations that continue to apply this to those who barge in, disrupt, or block church services, the left will want this law to go away.
Yeah, it's limited government 101, to be careful what you do now, because later it will be used against you. And also, I think it really speaks to the importance of the work that's done at FRC. One provision in a law in the 90s that people were working behind the scenes to get could 30 years from now change the whole debate and protect
part
a
of
lot
that is
liberties.
actually being able to look downrange and
Thinking
see the trajectory of culture and building. See, if you're trying to build a defense when you're under bombardment, it becomes very difficult. But if you're beginning to build those protections, years in advance, knowing what is happening as we have, taken out of our schools any references to God, if it's a positive reference, prayer, Bible study. We have a growing population that has no understanding or respect for God.
Yeah. And they talk about long-term consequences. Nothing's more long-term than how we educate our kids.
I want to go back to another topic, Sarah. We were talking about the abortion pill, abortion drug, that's such an issue in these states, about a dozen states that have total protection for the unborn and for their mothers, but all those laws are being undermined. Last week, the Department of Health and Human Services announced some policy changes to the abortion drug.
That's correct. So, for a little bit of context, there was, as we all are aware, the Dobbs decision in 2022 that gave the abortion issues back to the states. It overturned Roe versus Wade. In response to that, the very radically pro-abortion Biden administration had issued this guidance that affected 60,000 pharmacies nationwide. 60,000, that's a lot. And it was pressuring them, is the way that we sort of look at this legality, that it was pressuring these people in a way that they weren't sure if it was really giving them a choice as to whether they had to dispense the abortion drugs or not, but it was interpreted in that they had to dispense it. They were pressured to dispense it.
At that point, Biden pulled his whole cabinet together and said, we want a whole of government response to the overturn of Roe. And so this was a crisis for them. I mean, the world could have been burning up and it wouldn't have mattered to them. This was their focus.
Right.
And so this is a part of that outcome.
Of course. And they put this guidance out there, and religious pharmacies, people that are pro-life said, hey, hold on, what about our protection of conscience? What about our religious liberty? What about the fact that we do value life and want to protect it? And so there was legal challenges, which led to some revisions, but it still had so much ambiguity. And people wanted to know how much of a say do I really have in whether or not you're forcing me to dispense this really dangerous, life-threatening drug, right? And so that led to today, where the HHS has now fully rescinded that Biden-era guidance with the goal of getting rid of that ambiguity, that confusion. But as we've been talking about, there's still so much issues with this abortion drug. And so while talk to the pro-lifers, they will tell you that they welcome this move with open arms. They want these pharmacies to have the right to not dispense this drug. But there's still so much work to do because, as you mentioned, 63% of all abortions.
So this is good because it protects the individual rights of conscience. So this is good. We celebrate this. We welcome this.
Yes.
We're happy about this. But when you look at the bottom line, this really is not going to impact the abortion rates in this country via the pill.
That's a fact. And honestly, this whole time we've been talking about accountability and consequences, and I think we really need to be able to uphold those two principles firmly, because at the end of the day, these people will continue to push back against the laws that we put forth to protect life, to protect the truth of God. They're going to keep finding loopholes, but we need to tell them that, one, we're not going to back down, and two, there are consequences that will affect you.
Well, in part, the Dobbs decision recognized the right of the states to protect the unborn. The federal government is violating that principle by allowing these abortion pills to be mailed into the states.
Exactly. All the while, they're telling us that they're doing this review of the safety of the drugs, and then they're administering
been going on
new.
for 9 months. We could have a baby. Somebody could have a baby.
That's very
you actually
ironic.
had one.
I did, yeah.
Or your wife did, not you.
Right, well.
Yeah, okay. All right, text the word life to 67742 and add your voice to this debate. Sarah, Casey, thanks for joining me.
Thanks,
Thank
Tony.
you.